Uh, so I'm so tired. Hello everyone, welcome in. Oh dear. How are you guys? Hello Lord, hello Barco. Just trying to recalibrate my model and then we'll head into our final night of campfire stories. For some reason I'm like arched forward. Okay. Ta-da! Hello, 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 hello. How are you guys? Oh, that's so cute. Glad you guys are willing to stay up late for these stories. I've been I don't know how late we'll go or how many stories we'll read because I am exhausted. How was work? Very tiring. Very, very, very tiring. I was very tempted to just come home. You just woke up early. You know what? I'll count it. I'll take it. Yeah, work was very exhausting. I was tempted to just come home and go right to sleep, but excuse me. I wanted to at least do a few readings. I don't know, like I said, I don't know how long I'll go. We'll see how long it takes me to crash. I had like 2 energy drinks and a few cups of green tea throughout the day, and not much can save like 5 hours of sleep, you know? But yes, tonight is our last night out camping. Can't see it, but I mean, I guess you can see it kind of with the way my hand is moving. But I have a book here called Alien Encounters by Rupert Matthews. It says it has Pentagon files in it, but I don't know how. I don't think it's really anything crazy because I got this at a Barnes and Noble, so it's not classified by any means. So the government can't come after me yet. Yes, I hope you guys are having a good night. Or a good day. A good morning. I do have something in the works, hopefully for the channel within the next week or so that you guys will be happy to know about. But I'm going to keep it secret until it happens. Just know that, just to keep your eyes peeled on the channel within the next week or so, or week or two, I should say. The government, am I right? Well, like I said, I'm going to read a little of this, and then, you know, or should I start out by telling my UFO experience? It's nothing that crazy. I kind of hyped it up yesterday. It's not anything, like, super insane. I am slightly convinced I saw a UFO, like, last year sometime. So, yeah, let's start with that. It's kind of a short story, and that'll be much shorter than me reading this book to you guys. So, this happened, I don't know if you guys remember. It was like, I think it was like summer of last year. Or maybe it was more recently than that. I can't really remember. Maybe it was like fall of last year. But it was like when the northern lights were seen like really far south in America. Like you could see them in like Florida and such. And you could see them through like, unless it was like particularly strong, you couldn't see it with the naked eye, but you could definitely see it with a camera. So in Meringue Land, where the state I live, you could see it, like I said, not with your naked eye, but with your camera. So me and Sister Meringue and in-law Meringue all went out to a local like lake just to get away from like the light pollution of like, you know, civilization. We went out to this lake, and there were a bunch of people out there too, obviously, because it's a big deal. And everyone's pointing their phones at the sky and whatever. And I wasn't really picking anything up. I think we went on a day where it wasn't as powerful, or like as, yeah, I guess as powerful as it had been to see like the photos that people were getting. And obviously, I live very far south. I'm likely never going to go super north unless I'm going to like visit Canada or something, somewhere where the northern lights are very, very visible. But oh shoot, I almost started playing music. So I'm like, I gotta see this. I gotta see this thing. So we go out. We're on the lake, or not on the lake, but we're like on the shore, like on the banks of it. Camera's pointed up. And I'm trying to get pictures of it, and nothing's really showing up. Like, you could faintly see it, like the night sky, you could see the stars, and like if you took a photo, it was like a faint pink. So it was like, you know, you're kind of getting the northern lights, but it was nothing crazy. And then I'm just like staring, and then my sister Meringue downloaded this app, and it was like an AR app, kinda, where you could like point it in a direction in the night sky, and you could see like the constellations. You could see planets, you could see moons, and like the approximate location. So there was like obviously there was this bright light, and we're like, I wonder what that is. I wonder if that's a star. I wonder if that's like a planet or what. So we look at the app, and it's like, oh, that's the ISS. We're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So we're like looking at whatever, and we're just like staring up at the night sky, obviously. And I'm looking at the stars and all that, and all of a sudden, one of the stars, just in a straight line, just goes on with my finger, whoop, like that, and then disappears. And then I looked at Sister Meringue, and she looked at me, and I go, "You saw that, right?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "What the hell was that?" She goes, "I don't know. I thought it was like a shooting star." I was like, "Yeah, well, shooting stars don't tend to just shoot from standing perfectly still, like there's stars in the night sky, and then all of a sudden they go whoop." But I thought also it was a drone, like maybe it would be, but that wouldn't make any sense either, because again, one, drones don't go that high. This was in the sky. This was not like a helicopter height. This was not drone height. It was literally like this was a star, and then it just went whoop, and it was gone. And I thought that was my explanation. Shooting star didn't make sense. Drone didn't make sense. So I'm kind of convinced that I saw a UFO that night. But because I don't know what else it could have been. I really don't know what else it could have been. So that is the only UFO encounter story I have. But I still think it's pretty cool, because I do believe in aliens. Because obviously I would. Why wouldn't I? Do you know who I am? Do you know who you're talking to? Do you know what channel you are at? But I thought it was cool. Anyway, alien encounters, true life stories of UFOs and other extraterrestrial phenomena. Rupert Matthews. And if anyone has alien stories, feel free to share them. I would love to talk about them. Or like UFO sightings. Sorry, I am talking with someone I'm working on something with. Alright. Class, sit down by the campfire, get cozy, get your marshmallows roasted and toasted. Chapter 1. UFOs arrive. It's generally believed that the entire alien encounter phenomenon began with the sighting of flying saucers, or unidentified flying objects, by American pilot Kenneth Arnold in 1947. See Encountered Casebook number 1. Most studies of UFOs or books on the subject feature the Arnold sighting and describe it as the very first UFO sighting. In fact, this is very much a matter of using the wisdom of hindsight. At the time, neither Arnold nor anyone else even thought about aliens or UFOs. It was assumed that what he had seen was some kind of top-secret alien aircraft or revolutionary design. Nor was Arnold's the first sighting of such objects. It was merely the first to make it into the national and international press. For that, we must thank the reporter who took Arnold's description of the mysterious aircraft he had seen and dubbed it flying saucers. The name caught the name caught the public's imagination and made good newspaper copy. The story took a dramatic new twist when it became clear that whatever Arnold had seen was not a secret weapon being developed by the United States Air Force. The speed, design, and motion of Arnold's craft were utterly unlike anything being developed. The first thought that most people in aviation had thought was that the Soviet Russians had developed some startling new technology. Though Arnold's aircraft seemed so far in advance of anything Russians had used during World War II, which had ended only 2 years earlier, and it seemed rather unlikely. It was not long before people all across the USA started coming forward with their own sightings of mysterious aircraft. These people had been reluctant to speak publicly before, either because they feared ridicule or because they had not realized that they had seen anything particularly odd. Like Arnold, they had assumed that they were seeing some secret new type of aircraft. It must be remembered that at this time, jets, rockets, and helicopters were all new inventions shrouded in secrecy and mystery. There seemed to be no limit to the inventiveness of aircraft engineers. At this early stage, the reports that were made to the press or military were usually fairly vague. People reported seeing saucer-shaped objects flying very fast, or bright lights at night moving in unusual ways. On the 19th of August, 1947, for instance, a Mr. and Mrs. Bubsey were sitting on the porch of their home in Butte, Montana, with a neighbor enjoying the warm evening. A large bright object flew overhead, heading northeast at a tremendous speed. 10 minutes later, another 10 objects came flying, rather slower, but again heading northeast. As the startled witnesses watched, 3 of the objects peeled off from the irregular formation and headed due north. The Busbys did not give any clear description of these objects as regards size, shape, or color, merely that they were bright and moved fast. Rather more detailed, but not much, was the report made by Major Jones of the USAF. The report had great credibility, as Jones was a chief intelligence officer of the 28th Bombardment Wing based at Rapid City Air Force Base in South Dakota. If any Air Force intelligence officer was unable to report accurately what he had saw, nobody could. Jones said that he was walking across the parking lot at the airbase when he saw 12 strange aircraft driving down towards the base from the northeast. The aircraft were in a tight, diamond-shaped formation, indicating to Jones that they were military aircraft. He stopped to watch, wondering what type of aircraft these were. When the formation was about 4 miles away, the aircraft began to slow turn at an altitude of about 5,000 feet. Jones could now see the strange craft were shaped like a elliptical disc, and each was about 100 feet across. Having turned to face southwest, the craft accelerated to a speed estimated to be around 400 miles an hour and climbed out of sight. These were not the only new reports that were surfacing. People began to remember events. Sorry, my lake is terrible here. These were not only new reports that were surfacing. People began to remember events from previous years which had made no sense at the time, but which now seemed to fit into the flying saucer pattern. Among these were the Foo Fighters. There goes my hero. A nonsense word nicknamed from a comic strip. These had been seen in large numbers during 1944 and similar numbers in 1943 and 1945. There were glowing balls about 3 feet across which flew through the skies over war-torn Europe. The Foo Fighters had been seen of the air crew of Allied bombers on missions over Germany. The Foo Fighters were seen alongside the bomber formations for several minutes at a time before either disappearing or flying off at high speed. At first, the air crew thought the Foo Fighters to be some form of German weapon or tracking system and tried to shoot them down. Bullets seemed to have no effect on the Foo Fighters, and since they appeared to not be dangerous, the Allied flyers eventually came to accept them as a feature of the skies over Germany. After the war, it was discovered that German pilots had also seen the balls of light accompanying Allied bomber formations. The Germans had taken the objects to be Allied weapons or devices of some kind. What the Foo Fighters actually were has never been discovered. Equal enigmatic had been the so-called ghost flyers of 1930s Scandinavia. These odd aircrafts were seen hundreds of times over Finland, Sweden, and Norway between 1932 and 1937. When seen in daylight, the Ghost Flyers took the form of extremely large aircraft, bigger than anything than flying, colored gray and without markings of any kind. At night, the aircraft often shone dazzlingly, bright searchlights down to the ground. The Ghost Flyers eventually came alone, but sometimes appeared in groups of 2 or 3. At first, the various Scandinavian governments thought that they were being overflown by top-secret scout aircraft from Russia, Germany, or Britain. It soon became clear, however, that the Ghost Flyers were performing aerobatics and achieving speeds utterly impossible to any known aircraft, and with hindsight, impossible even to today. Sorry, getting some agua. Having tried to shoot down the strange intruders and spent fruitless days searching for their hidden bases, the Scandinavian authorities lost interest. The sightings faded in 1937 and ceased altogether by 1939, by which time everyone had more important things on their minds. In the previous century, the years 1896 and 1897 had seen numerous sightings of craft taken to be airships over the USA. These crafts were generally around 100 feet long and colored gray without any markings. Sometimes they were seen to have wings or propellers, sometimes not. On a few occasions, the strange airships had occupants. These were generally said to be men, sometimes rather short, who spoke some foreign language that could not be understood, though one airship over Sacramento in 1896 had a pilot who shouted in apparent good American English, "We hope to be in San Francisco by tomorrow noon." Some of the reports made in the wake of Arnold's sighting were clearly misidentified natural events. A glowing disc-shaped object seen over Codroy in Newfoundland turned out to be a meteorite heated red hot by air friction as it crashed through the atmosphere. Others, quite clearly, were not. On the 15th of August, 1947, Mr. A.C. Urey and his 2 young sons saw a disc flying low over Snake River Canyon in Idaho while they were on a fishing trip. The object passed them at a distance of just 300 feet and thought it was moving fast. All three got a look. And though it was moving fast, all three got a good look. It was about 20 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 10 feet high. The object had a flange, or rim around its base, and made a soft whishing sound as it passed. As it flew out of the canyon, the object traveled low over a line of poplar trees which bent and twisted as if caught by a sudden violent wind. Potentially more dramatic was the event that occurred on or about July 4th, 1947, near Roswell in New Mexico. Radar staff at the Roswell Air Force Base tracked an unknown aircraft flying erratically that suddenly vanished from the radar screens as if it had crashed. On the 8th of July, the Roswell Air Base press officer Walter Haut issued a press release saying that a flying saucer had crashed near the airbase and that the Air Force personnel were investigating the debris. The press announced on the story, expecting the mystery of the flying saucers would soon be solved. Later that day, however, a rather embarrassed Major Jesse Marshall called a press conference to announce that the crashed flying saucer was in fact a weather balloon of a new type that Roswell men had not recognized. The Roswell incident would later assume massive importance for those who study UFOs and aliens encounters, but in 1947 it was quickly forgotten. Very different was the encounter that took place at the Godman Air Force Base in Virginia on January 7th, 1948. At lunchtime, a large unidentified object had been seen over Fort Knox heading towards Godman Air Base. The guards at Fort Knox phoned the control tower at Godman to report the object. Colonel Guy Hicks, commander at Godman, was alerted and sprinted to the control tower just in time to see a large reddish object fly overhead. The sky was dotted with clouds and nobody got a good look of the object. Hicks was not an officer to take chances, however. Something had intruded into airspace that was his duty to guard, and that something had to be investigated. He scrambled the three Excuse me, my glasses are not as good as I would like them to be. Hicks scrambled the 3 P-51 fighter aircraft that were kept on standby at the base. The aircraft took off and set out in pursuit of the mysterious object. It was Flight Commander Captain Thomas Mantell who sighted the object first as the 3 aircraft came out of the clouds. "I've sighted the thing," Mantell radioed back to Hicks at Godman. "It looks metallic, and it's tremendous in size." A few minutes later, Mantell called again. "The thing's starting to climb," he reported. "It's making half my speed, trying to close in." By this time, the two other pilots were being left behind in chase as both the object and Mantell climbed rapidly. They radioed in to say that they could see the object and Mantell's aircraft giving chase, but then cloud closed in again and they lost sight of the object and Mantell. After searching for a while, they turned back to Godman. Mantell, meanwhile, was in hot pursuit. 10 minutes after his comrades lost sight of him, Mantell radioed again. "It's still above me, making my speed or better," he said. "I'm going up 20,000 feet. If I'm no closer, then I'll abandon the chase." After several minutes of radio silence from Mantell, Hicks began to get worried. Calls were put out, but Mantell did not respond. More aircraft were scrambled to search the skies for the mysterious object and for Mantell's P-51. The aircraft pilots took their search up as high as 33,000 feet and spread out for 100 miles, but they saw nothing. A few hours later, the wreckage of Mantell's aircraft was found strewn over a fairly large area of countryside, and it had previously broken up at high altitude and fallen to the ground into 1,000 pieces. The P-51 was a famously robust and reliable fighter that simply did not just fall to pieces for no reason at all. Suddenly, the flying saucer mystery was no longer a bizarre, mysterious talking point to fill newspaper columns on quiet news days. An Air Force officer had been killed. It was now deadly serious. Questions began to be asked with a new urgency, and conclusions were rapidly reached. Whoa, there's a photo here. No, it's just an illustration. I thought I was hoping that the photo would be of the plane. Just see if it had anything weird on it. First, it was obvious that the USAF would not allow its own officers to be killed chasing after one of their own secret weapons. Whenever the flying saucers were, they were not being produced by the US government. Second, most people quickly concluded that Soviet Russia would not be testing secret aircrafts or missiles over US airspace. The risk of having one being shot down or crashing was simply too great. If the Soviets did have such aircraft, they would surely fly them only over Russian airspace, keeping them a secret until war broke out when they could be unleashed to terrible effect. Third, the flying saucers were generally held to be real ones of some awesome power and ability, but what on earth were they? Various people began to investigate the problem. Some were media reporters, some air professionals, others just interested members of the public. Unknown to the general public, however, the USAF was already undertaking a formal and intensive investigation. The initial report from Kenneth Arnold and others that came in the during the weeks that followed were passed to the Air Techno... I promise I can read at above a third grade level. Were passed to the Air Technical Intelligence Center, ATIC, based in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. ATIC was the unit tasked with assessing the aircraft and air weapons of other countries. So it was natural that any reports of strange aircraft would be sent there for analysis. The staff at ATIC were baffled. They were accustomed to studying photos, technical data, and other intelligence reports detailing the performance of aircraft not very different from those flown at by the USAF. They were now being asked to deal with eyewitness reports of craft and seemingly highly advanced abilities. A decision was made to ignore reports from citizens, but to chase up and investigate any reports that came in from the Air Force personnel. The military top brass at the Pentagon were pushing ATIC for quick and definitive answer. All that ATIC could report was that they were working on the problem. In September, ATIC produced a carefully worded interim report that avoided giving any firm conclusions. The basic thrust of the report was that many, perhaps all, reports could be explained as natural phenomena of some kind, but that a small number of reports probably could not be dismissed so lightly. These few reports, ATIC stated, indicated that the flying discs were something real and not visionary. There were objects approximating that the shape of a disc and in such appreciable and of such appreciable size as to appear to be as large as a man-made aircraft. The senior officers at the Pentagon were unimpressed by the vague and inconclusive report. They were responsible for the air defense of the USA and wanted not only a quick and definitive answer to what people were seeing, but also a clear course of action that they could in turn recommend to the politicians. The situation was not very much further advanced when Captain Mantell was killed. Colonel Hicks was a well-known and highly regarded officer. Mantell was considered to be a crack pilot. The Pentagon was seriously alarmed that the USA now faced a real, deadly, and immediate threat. The USAF was ordered to get to the bottom of the problem and to set up Project Sign. This was an investigative team of Air Force officers and civilian experts tasked with going over all known reports of flying saucers to produce a final and definitive answer. Among the civilian experts recruited to Project Sign was Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Hynek was an astronomer of great repute whose task was to see if any of the reports could be explained by being meteors, comets, or stars seen under unusual conditions. Hynek would later become one of the most respected UFO investigators in the world, but at this stage was simply an astronomer hired to do a job. Project Sign investigating 237 sightings, selecting them on the grounds of witness credibility and detail of observation. After a year of work, Sign concluded that 77 of these reports could be explained as comets, stars, conventional aircraft, weather balloons, or other perfectly normal things seen under unusual or misleading circumstances. The remaining 23% were put down as unknown explanation. For public consumption, a new Project Grudge was created. This produced a report that was released to the public. It was basically that Project Sign report, but with any sensitive or secretive information edited out. The Grudge Report, as it became known, was issued on December 27, 1949. This downplayed the results and recommended that one Air Force base cease detailed investigations of flying saucers. With some 23% of reports being classified as unknown, the Grudge recommendations might be considered odd. From that point of view of the USAF, however, they made perfect sense. The task of the Air Force was not, and is not, to investigate strange phenomena, no matter how interesting they might be. Its task is to protect the USA and its allies from air attack. By 1949, the Cold War with the Soviet Union was getting seriously underway. The Soviet Union had many hundreds of jet fighters and jet bombers, plus an unknown number of rocket-powered missiles for the USAF to worry about. Whenever the flying saucers were, they were not Russian, possessed no obvious weaponry, and posed no clear nor immediate threat. The first worries caused by the death of Captain Mantell had by this date been allayed. An investigation had found that Mantell's P-51 had not carried the usual high-altitude oxygen equipment. This was probably why Mantell would say he would halt his pursuit at 20,000 feet, but in the circumstances he may have been tempted to go higher. If he had done, he may have blacked out due to loss of oxygen. The P-51 would have then continued to climb until it stalled, then fallen nose down into a dive accelerated by its engine. In a few seconds, the stresses of a steep power dive would have torn the wings off the fighter and caused it to disintegrate. Satisfied that Mantell had died due to accident, the USAF discounted the incident as indicating that flying saucers were dangerous. With many pressing demands on its side, manpower, and budgets, the USAF decided to sideline the whole flying saucer business. It was not the task of the USAF to investigate anomalous phenomena, no matter how interesting they thought it might be. Its prime job was to protect the USA and its allies from air attack. The flying saucers did not pose a threat, and so were no business of the USAF. Any reports that did come in were still passed to the ATIC, but they were simply filed without investigation. The press and public had not lost interest. Reports continued to be made and were featured by the press and broadcast media. Some reporters took a particular interest in flying saucers, as did some professionals and members of the public. Since it was now becoming clear that only some of the strange aircraft were disc-shaped, Arnold's originals had been crescent-shaped, these researchers began to drop the popular name of flying saucers. Instead, they adopted the term unidentified flying object. This was thought to lend an air of scientific rigor to the various investigations and meant that investigators were not prejudging the eventual solution to the riddle. Among those still working on the problem was retired U.S. Marines officer Major Donald Keyhoe. Keyhoe had extensive personal contacts within the military. These enabled him to talk to many witnesses firsthand and see many reports written. And though he was denied access to any of the secret reports, He did learn of their existence. Kehoe gradually came to a series of startling conclusions, which he published in his classic 1950 book, The Flying Saucers Are Real. You should get that book. Ugh. Kehoe believed that the Earth had been under investigation from beings from another planet, or series of planets, for some 200 years or more. He believed that the sudden upsurge in sightings after 1947 was linked to the detonation of the first atomic bomb in 1945. Kehoe argued that the investigation of atomic power was a key moment in the progress of a civilization, and that any more advanced culture would be bound to take notice of the crossing of this threshold. The increased sightings of flying saucers were, Kehoe argued, evidence that the previously sporadic observation of humanity by aliens had been stepped up. In due course, Kehoe argued, the aliens would make contact, though when, where, or how would be up to them. Kehoe's final conclusion was that Grudge Report had been the public facade of a top-secret report. Kehoe believed that the hidden secret report had concluded that the flying saucers were alien spaceships, but that releasing that information to the public would cause such a panic that the information had been suppressed. Kehoe's book was an immediate and staggering success. It was reprinted just 2 weeks after being published and eventually sold over 500,000 copies. By the autumn of 1950, the idea that flying saucers were alien spacecraft had taken a firm hold to the public's imagination and was assumed the fact in most press reports of flying saucers. In 1952, the USAF decided that the continuing number of reports coming in of flying saucers and other unknown objects demanded some sort of response. In March, Captain Edward J. Ruppelt was put in charge of the, by now, bulging files of the ATIC. His task was to respond to inquiries from the press or public and to try and bring some sort of order to the files and their contents. Ruppelt was given neither orders nor resources to investigate reports or theories. The USAF believed that task had been completed with the Grudge Report. Ruppelt turned to various officers and others, including Hynek, who had an interest in the subject and persuaded several to work part-time or without pay on the new initiative. Ruppelt's task was given the codename Project Blue Book. Oh shit, I know about that. Just 4 months later, the flying saucer story took a dramatic new turn when the formation of a mysterious craft flew over Washington, D.C., the capital of the U.S. On July 19th, a dozen or more saucers flew over central Washington, including over the White House and the Capitol building. The objects were tracked on radar and jet fighters sent up to intercept, but the objects had vanished by the time the jets arrived. The UFOs were back on July 26th, again flying over the very heart of the U.S. power and prestige. The dramatic sightings were not only putting flying saucers back on top of the news agenda, it also created widespread alarm that aliens were about to invade. Hundreds of reports of new sightings of discs and other flying objects poured into the USAF, and they were forwarded to Captain Ruppelt at Project Blue Book. Unable to cope with the mass of paperwork deluging his office, Ruppelt appealed for help. In response to the USAF, asked the Battelle Memorial Institute, a leading scientific research facility located in Ohio, to study the most recent reports. Meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, decided to take a hand. The CIA had become seriously alarmed by the saucers seen over Washington and by the vast number of subsequent reports that summer. It was not that the CIA thought the Earth was about to be invaded, nor that even flying saucers were anything other than natural objects or hallucinations. The CIA were worried about the Russians. If the Soviets were ever going to launch an air attack on the mainland USA, they were hardly going to phone up the White House and announce the fact beforehand. The first the Americans would know about the attack would be when the missiles tipped with atomic warheads came streaking through the skies. If those missiles were mistaken for flying saucers, they might well land and explode without the USAF having taken any action to intercept them. Just as great a worry for the CIA was the flood of reports that followed the Washington sightings. These overwhelmed not just Project Blue Book, but most of the reporting systems of the USAF designed to watch for intruding enemy aircraft. The CIA reasoned that the Soviets might instruct their agents in the USA, and nobody knew how many of those there were, to release balloons, fly model aircraft, and otherwise start a rash of flying saucer reports in order to swamp the USAF reporting systems to cover up for a missile attack. The CIA concluded that the best action was to persuade the American public that flying saucers simply did not exist. To do this, they need to establish firmly in the public mind that all reported flying saucers were perfectly normal objects that had been misinterpreted by the witness. CIA, therefore, persuaded a highly respected physicist Dr. H.P. Robertson to convene a panel of scientists who would study saucer reports and pronounce them to be prosaic and entirely innocent objects. So, interesting. The government really was covering up UFO sightings. I don't know why that surprises me in the least. Oh, giving my hand a rest here. Let's stretch it. Stretch my neck too. Hee hee. Hee hee. Hee hee. Oh god, my body like contorts when I do that. Robertson panel reported on January 1953. As wished by the CIA, the report concluded that the unidentified flying objects were just that, quite normal objects that for one reason or another were unidentified by the witness who saw them. It's recommended that active steps be taken by the government to educate the public of this conclusion, and further that military staff should concentrate on genuine hostile powers, not on theoretical aliens. In short, the Robertson panel recommended that the U.S. government should actively dismiss and debunk all UFO reports. This was to become the policy, official or not, of the U.S. government, and the USAF and its Project Blue Book and other government agencies. The earlier disinterest was replaced by active hostility. The extent to which Project Blue Book, the FBI and CIA and others had pursued this policy and the techniques have used this manner of ongoing controversy. In 1969, the USAF announced that the continuation of Project Blue Book cannot be justified on the grounds of national security or in the interest of science. Project Blue Book was closed down. Officially, at least, the U.S. government had no further interest in UFO or alien issues. Many people suspect that it has a very active unofficial involvement, but this is shrouded in mystery and secrecy, even if it takes place. What is beyond doubt is that the outright denial by the U.S. government that UFOs existed at all bred distrust and hostility amongst those who were still trying to investigate the phenomenon. Many suspect that behind the activities of the Grudge Report and the Robertson panel, there lurked a darker and ominous reality. It's argued that if the U.S. government did in fact know that the UFOs were alien spacecraft, and perhaps even captured one, then the most natural course for them to take was to deny that UFOs existed so that they could keep all the secrets they had gained. Under this theory, all government activity and announcements had been designed to cover up the truth. By 1953, the scene was set for the following decades of alien encounters. Most governments, following the U.S. lead, had either denied that UFOs exist or remained aloof from the subject. Meanwhile, the members of the public have continued to experience strange, bizarre, and sometimes terrifying things. It's been left to investigators, who are mostly part-time amateurs, to try and make sense of what is happening. Oh. And here I thought that people were crazy for saying the government would cover things up. Eh? Eh? My arm is really itchy for some reason. Please hold. I think I rubbed up against like a bush that I'm allergic to or something, because I've had like, oh my god, my wrist has been so itchy these last few days. Whenever I scratch it, I get like a little bump on it. Probably shouldn't be, but you know, it's just how I go. Gonna read this case file real quick, but let me go get some more water. Brief pause in the action. Delicioso. I didn't even realize the cover of this book. Why? This is it says a case file. Encounter Casebook number 1. Type daylight disc, date June 24th, 1947, in Mount Rainier, Washington State. Witness Kenneth Arnold, the Arnold Report. Keith Arnold was an experienced pilot who had been in Chehalis, Washington on business. On the morning of June 24th, he set off to fly home to Oregon in a single-engined Callier light aircraft. With both time and fuel to spare, he decided to first spend an hour or so over the Mount Rainier area searching for a U.S. military transport aircraft that had been reported missing and was presumed to have crashed. It was while turning on a new leg of this search pattern at an altitude of 9,200 feet that Arnold saw a bright flash of light sweep over his aircraft. Such a thing usually happened when the sun reflected off surfaces or of another aircraft close by. Fearing a collision with an aircraft he had not seen, Arnold hurriedly leveled his aircraft and scanned the skies, desperately seeking another aircraft. Quickly saw a DC-4 airliner some miles distant and flying away from him. Discounting this as the source of the flash, he saw a second flash far to the north. Staring at the location of the flash, Arnold saw a line of 9 aircraft flying towards him at an angle. As the aircraft came closer, he saw that they were flying in echelon, a usual military formation, but arranged with the lead aircraft above the others contrary to the standard military practice. Arnold at this point presumed that the fast-approaching aircraft were military jets of some kind and relaxed. But as the 9 aircraft got closer, Arnold was able to see them each in detail at once and realized that he was seeing something very strange indeed. Each aircraft was shaped like a wide crescent with neither fuselage nor tail. Moreover, the aircraft were flying with a strange, undulating motion, quite unlike the straight-line flight of all known aircraft. They also fluttered and dipped from side to side at times, sending off bright flashes in the sun as it reflected from their highly polished silver-blue surfaces. There were no markings that Arnold could see, though he was concentrating hard at the mysterious aircraft. The formation of strange aircraft was moving fast. Arnold timed them passing over landmarks on the ground and later estimated speed around 1,300 miles an hour. This was much faster than any known aircraft at the time. Even military fast jets flew at only around 700 miles an hour. The aircraft were soon out of sight. Arnold headed for Yakima Airfield and went to see Al Baxter, the general manager of Central Aircraft. The 2 men discussed the strange aircraft, and Arnold drew pictures of what he had seen. Other pilots and aircrew joined the conversation, but none could explain what Arnold had seen other than to guess that the strange aircraft was some kind of secret military project. Still confused, Arnold then resumed his interrupted flight home to Oregon. By the time he arrived, Arnold had begun to worry that he had seen some sort of highly advanced Soviet war machine. He decided to form the FBI, but their office was closed, so he dropped in the offices at the East Oregonian? Did I say that? Oregonian? Newspaper. He told the reporters there all about his experience. One of them, Bill Biquette, queried the way the strange aircraft moved. Arnold elaborated on the undulating motion by saying they flew like a saucer would if you skipped them across water. Biquette filled his report on the National News Agency, writing about flying saucers. It was repeated across America, and soon the public was agog at news of these flying saucers. Meanwhile, Arnold had returned to the FBI to tell them about the strange craft. The local FBI man passed the details on to the head office in Washington, concluding his report with the words, "It is personal opinion that the interviewer that Arnold actually saw what he states he saw in the attached report. Already concerned about Russian intentions in military technology, the U.S. military pounced on Arnold's report. An era was born." Kind of crazy that aircraft, UFO sightings in general only came to be in the last 100 years or so. I mean, there are pictures and stuff, paintings with weird things in the sky, and of course you have theories of the pyramids being built by aliens or something. But the fact that only within 80, 90 years did people actually start thinking oh, maybe there's life in another galaxy or outside of our planet. That is very wild. I want to read a little about Project Blue Book, though. Project Blue Book's cool. I vaguely know about it. Project Blue Book. Can I get... Oh, there's a Wikipedia page on Project Blue Book. Let's see. Welcome back from ads. Project Blue Book was the code name for the systematic study of UFOs by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to its termination on December 17, 1969. The project, headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio, was initially directed by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, and followed projects of a similar nature, such as Project Sign, established in 1947, and Project Grunge in 1949. Project Blue Book had two goals, namely to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security, and to scientifically analyze UFO-related data. Thousands of UFO reports were collected, analyzed, and filed as a result of the Condon Report, which yielded that the study of UFOs was unlikely to yield major scientific discoveries, and a review of the report in the National Academy of Sciences. Project Blue Book was terminated in 1969. The Air Force supplies the following summary of its investigations. Number 1, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. There's no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized by unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. And 3, there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. By the time Project Blue Book ended, it had collected 12,618 UFO reports and concluded that most of them were misidentifications of natural phenomena, cloud stars, etc., or conventional aircraft. According to the National Reconnaissance Office, a number of the reports could be explained by flights of the formerly secret reconnaissance planes U-2 and A-12. 701 reports were classified as unexplained, even after stringent analysis. UFO experts were archived in our... UFO reports were archived and are available under the Freedom of Information Act, but names and other personal information of all witnesses has been redacted. Okay. I wonder if there are any government reports in here, because it did say something about like Pentagon Papers, right? What do we want to read here? Let's read the alien abduction casebook. The 170. Damn, right to it. I'm such a G. This is alien abduction, September 19th, 1961, in Highway 3 near Lancaster, New Hampshire. Betty Hill and Barney Hill. Although their encounter took place in 1961, the Hills did not hit the public headlines until the publication of in 1966 of a book based on their experiences. The Interrupted Journey was an immediate bestseller, and contents revolutionized researchers into UFOs and aliens. The Hill encounter began when Betty and Barney were returning from a holiday in Canada. They were driving down Highway 3, hoping to arrive home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, around 3 a.m. At about 11, when passing Lancaster, the couple saw a bright light in the sky that seemed to be flying north at high speed, then turned suddenly and moved southwest at a slower pace. The Hill drove on for a few miles, with the object seeming to keep pace with them, though it was moving in the most erratic manner. About halfway between Lancaster and Concord, the Hills pulled over and got out of their car and watched the object. Came down closer, they could now see that it was an oval-shaped bluish-white object with a row of windows on its leading edge and 2 projections on either side. Through the windows could be seen diminutive humanoids trotting about as if tending to some mission or another. A red light appeared on each projection. Barney Hill suddenly took fright. He insisted his wife get back in the car, and he was convinced that they were going to attack. The Hills got back in their car and drove off at high speed. Though they heard beeping noises and what seemed to be stones hitting the car, they soon left the UFO behind and strove on through the night. They got home around 5 a.m. and went to bed. 5 days later, Betty Hill wrote a letter to UFO investigator Donald Kehoe outlining what happened. A few weeks later, Kehoe and his team contacted the Hills and on November 25th visited to get a detailed account of their encounter. During this process at the Hills realized that there was a time discrepancy. They'd only slept for a few minutes. They only stopped for a few minutes to look at the UFO, yet they were 2 hours late in getting home. The investigation was detailed and careful. It concluded, "It is my view that the observer's blackout is not of any great significance. I think the whole experience was so improbable and fantastic to witness that his mind finally refused to believe what his eyes were perceiving, and mental block resulted." The matter did not end there. Barney's account was soon to be seen to be riddled with inconsistencies. Although he insisted that he had seen the crew of the UFO only at distance and indistinctly, he also said the leader of the crew had an expressionless face and that another crew member had grinned at him when looking back over his shoulder. It was Betty, however, who had the real problems. Over the following months, she had a series of vivid nightmares. These contained disjointed and terrifying images linked to the UFO encounter. She saw herself undergoing very painful medical tests, being marched into the UFO by uniformed aliens talking in English to the aliens, being shown a star map. A jumble of scenes emerged gradually over a long time. Barney began to suffer from depression and lethargy, as well as a nasty stomach ulcer. His doctor thought that he might be suffering from mental issues related to accumulated past experiences that had become too much for him to cope with. Barney was therefore sent to see Dr. Benjamin Simon. Can't trust someone with 2 first names. Who specialized in hypnotic regression to expose and therefore deal with the causes of emotional problems. After a few sessions with Barney, Dr. Simon asked Betty to attend a session. After several hypnotic regression sessions with the two separately, Dr. Simon revealed what he had found. The results seemed to explain Betty's nightmares and Barney's problems. Both of the Hills had almost identical stories. According to the memories unlocked by hypnosis, the Hills had the UFO much as they recalled. Had seen the UFO much as they recalled, but as Barney drove off, the car was stopped by a dozen men standing out in the road. Men had opened the car doors, reached in, and pulled the Hills out. The Hills, who were strangely unable to struggle or resist, although both were very frightened, were escorted by the men into the woods and to a clearing where the UFO was resting on the ground. The UFO-nauts were described as being around 4 feet tall, dressed in tight-fitting suits of black leather and some other smooth fabric. Some of them had small peaked caps on their head. The humanoids were basically human in proportion, but their heads were large and oval-shaped with the pointed chins, snub noses, and slit-like mouths. There did not seem to be any ears. External ears. Their eyes were large and slanted, but otherwise fairly human in appearance. The Hills then marched up the ramp to the UFO itself. Barney's recollections became vague at this point, but Betty was able to recall events clearly. She was taken to one room and Barney in another. The room, Betty met an alien who could speak good English. He asked Betty questions about her age, diet, physical health, and took samples of her earwax, hair, fingernails, and skin scrapings. The man then asked Betty to lie on the couch and attached her to a large machine equipped with needles, dials, and gauges. He removed Betty's dress and began an extremely painful examination that involved jabbing needles into Betty, apparently to see if she was pregnant. Ooh. Another of the aliens then entered and waved his hand, at which point the pain left. New arrival then asked to look in Betty's mouth and seemed surprised that she could not take her teeth out. Betty explained that Barney had false teeth. This led to a conversation about the aging process in humans. New arrival, whom Betty took to be the leader of the crew, then talked to Betty for some time, seemingly fascinated by the fact that Barney had black skin and Betty white. He also showed Betty a map of the location of the star system where they had come from. Betty asked for some proof of the alien's existence, and the leader handed over a book, but it was soon taken away when the other members of the crew objected. The leader then told Betty that neither she nor Barney would remember anything of the event, adding that even if they do, no one would believe them. The Hills then marched back down the ramp and returned to their car. The UFO took off, and the Hills continued their journey home. The first alien abduction to ever become public was over. Huh. I feel like I vaguely remember hearing about Barney and Betty Hill before. I don't know if maybe Wendigoon talked about it before, because it sounds like something he would talk about. I mean, just like that, and along with Project Blue Book and Arnold, the Arnold report, it all sounds like stuff that Wendigoon has talked before. I would need to go back and watch some of his old stuff, because I think it might be like in his conspiracy iceberg video, which I've watched so many times despite it being like a 10-hour long video. But for the moment, I did say that this would probably be a little shorter stream. I've been camping out in these woods for what is it now? 4 days. I'm ready to go back home to my nice warm bed and take a few days to myself. So, though it was short, thank you guys for spending this week listening to stories by the campfire. We go back to our regularly scheduled Len practices next week. Don't know if anyone's even on for me to send you off to. I am fairly tired from work, and I could use a nice lay down covered in mosquito bites. Well, I did tell you to pack mosquito or bug spray. That's on you. I made sure to cover myself in bug spray, and I am living the dream next to this fire that keeps the bugs away anyway, for the most part. Let's see. Anyone on right? Oh, Melva's on. Yeah, we'll go raid her. She popped in on our first night of our camping trip, so let's go raid her. Again, sorry it was a bit shorter, but I'm exhausted. I wanted to at least get an hour in today. I'll be back Monday. I'll be back Monday. And tomorrow, next week's stream schedule might be a little weird because work schedule is going to be a little weird. But for Monday and Wednesday, it'll be your normal scheduled 5 p.m. Shindig. And then Friday, it'll probably be another late stream. We'll see. Maybe like closer to 7 or 8. But I'll let you guys know on Twitter. It's been a nice week. Thanks for taking us out here. Yeah, figured it was a nice end to summer. Go camping. Enjoy the weather, enjoy the sounds of nature, and tell some spooky stories along the way. But we'll get back to our regularly scheduled, our shenanigans as we usually have. But again, thank you guys for all the support. Thank you guys for all the love you've shown. And remember, it is September. If you do have, a little something laying around, if you want to, support the channel, wink, 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 wink. You can't see, I'm winking with my right eye, but you can't really tell because I have a let me try this. What if I do this? No, you still can't see my eye. Well, that's just how it's gonna be. Well, like I said, thank you guys. I have something cool in the pipeline that I hope you guys are also as excited for. But I'll let you know the second it happens. But thank you guys again. Thank you for coming camping with me. Thank you for listening to stories. Thank you for sharing stories. And I will see you all next week. Enjoy your weekend. Take some time to yourself. Enjoy the great outdoors. And I'm going to send you guys off to Malva. So, looks like she's playing some Dead by Daylight. Well, have a good night. Have a good weekend. I will see you, lovely sour tarts, on Monday. Goodbye. Love you all. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.